DIRT TRAX TV is sponsored by Polaris, think outside. Can-Am, follow your path. Yamaha, revs your heart. And by Honda Power Sports, power your dreams, whatever the terrain.
One of the best feelings about riding an ATV is being able to share that experience with someone. Whether it's getting stuck together, sharing a couple of laughs, or the memories you can keep talking about long after the ride is over, riding with someone who shares your passion is a huge component of what makes this sport so awesome. We got ourselves a brand new 2025 Polaris Sportsman 570 Touring Ultimate. And when I say Ultimate, I mean this thing is jam-packed with just about every comfort feature you and your passenger could ever want out of a 2-up ATV. Before we go into all the details about this unit, let's just take a quick look at how Polaris's mid-bore touring line shapes up and where this particular model sits. It seems like the manufacturers are putting a lot of focus on the mid-bore category because demand for value line machines is so high. With rising fuel prices and rising price tags attached to higher and higher performance side-by-sides, off-roaders are looking for alternatives for those wallet busters that still provide the fun factor and, if necessary, can get a bit of work done if it's needed. We've seen this with the introduction of the more efficient single-cylinder Outlander, and it appears that the big four Japanese manufacturers are committed to making tweaks and updates to their flagship models that sit in the 40 to 50 horsepower range. However, at this time in the mid-bore category, only Polaris and Can-Am have new 2-up ATV offerings, which is particularly appealing to riders who want to share their experience without the added expense of a second unit. The base model Sportsman 570 Touring starts at around 10 grand US, which is pretty decent for a 2-passenger vehicle. Mind you, there's really no bells and whistles with this model, but it does get you and a passenger out on the trails on a new unit at a fair price. Moving up one step is the Sportsman Touring 570 EPS, featuring multi-select electronic power steering, and then from there you move up to the premium, and then sitting at the top of the pile, we've got this unit. There's a pretty big jump in price when you move from the base model up to the Ultimate, so let's take a quick look at what you get when you reach this price level. Right from the base model, standard features include the 44 horsepower 567cc ProStar single-cylinder engine, this new removable passenger seat, loads of storage, and Polaris on-demand all-wheel drive. The Ultimate package includes high-output LED pod and headlights, a 3,500-pound Polaris HD winch with synthetic rope and auto-stop, HID-activated security system, multi-select EPS, 26-inch Duro tires wrapped around 14-inch aluminum wheels, a front trail bumper and front and rear rack extenders, dual LED headlights and taillights, front and rear A-arm guards, engine braking, active descent control, drive modes, and premium paint. One of the biggest differences between this unit and the ones below it is the inclusion of the arch-lower double A-arm front suspension, whereas the 3 units below the Ultimate use McPherson struts. If you want the Ultimate suspension, you gotta get the Ultimate model. Probably the biggest feature included on this model is the 7S Ride Command display. This is hands down the nicest display offered in the industry, providing vivid digital imagery of your speedo and tack. Or make quick adjustments to the 3-mode EPS or other features, adjust your plow height when operating an implement, and in game mode you can insert your memory card and view images directly on your screen. You also have the ability to access route mapping and group ride features, so you can plan your trips and keep track of other riders in your pack. Plus, you can actually program your reverse override button through the 7S. With a short press, it takes you to the next screen, and a long press can be programmed to open up maps or whatever you want it to. We've had plenty of experience with the 7S Ride Command display on Polaris snowmobiles and side-by-sides, and have seen the slow progression from other manufacturers as they strive to meet the demands of their fan base for something competitive. So far, the 7S is the cat's pajamas and adds a significant level of sophistication and value to this unit. Polaris has paid really close attention on this machine to the comfort features for rider and passenger. Seat extends all the way to the back, and there is lots of cushioning for the passenger. Down in the footwells, the extended wheelbase means there's lots of room down there for my feet to move around, and Sarah's got this raised footwell area to keep her feet up higher and they're out of the way from mine, so I'm not stepping on them while we're riding. My only gripe about this machine is that I feel that this seat could use just a hair more cushioning, maybe just a little denser foam. We've been hitting quite a few bumps today, and I'm feeling more than I'd like. However, I think Sarah's pretty comfortable. How you doing back there, Sarah? Awesome. And if you're riding solo and don't have the need for a passenger seat, it removes easily with one latch, and anyone you pass on the trail will swear you're riding a one-up. Polaris does offer an accessory cover that fits over this area and covers this little peg that holds the seat in place. However, it is an additional cost to you, and my feeling is at this price point, that's something that should be included right when you buy it. As I mentioned before, all models in the 570 Touring line feature a McPherson strut front suspension. However, when you move up to the Ultimate, you can take advantage of the arched lower A-arm, double A-arm front suspension, which nets you 11.5 inches of ground clearance. Plus it includes steel body coilover shocks with snail cam adjusters. Front suspension travel is 8.9 inches and travel from the dual A-arm IRS is 9.5 inches. I found the suspension to be a bit soft out of the crate, and I highly recommend increasing the spring preload on the snail cam adjusters by at least 2 positions with the tool provided. It made a huge difference when we were riding. My only complaint about the suspension's adjustability is that the rear snail cam collars are in a cramped position between the rear wheel and sway bar, making it difficult to access with the provided tool without completely removing the rear wheel. I mean, I'm sure you could do it with a flathead screwdriver and a mallet, but you should know what you're doing so you don't accidentally damage your shock. Also new to this unit is the move from a square steel tubular frame to the 1.5 by 1 inch rectangular tubular frame, which makes for a stronger, stiffer chassis and allows the suspension to do its job even better. You can easily access EPS on the 7S display and choose between low, medium, and high EPS settings. We rode the Touring in all 3 modes during our testing and mostly played between low and medium without ever finding a definitive mode that I'd say was the best. To be honest, I've always felt that the EPS input on Sportsman models is a bit too much input for my particular taste. On this unit, low was enough input to soak up rock hits and reduce bar whip while being a bit too light at lower speeds. Medium was more input than I felt I wanted, but beneficial at slow speed crawling. I'd like to see Polaris continue to evolve this 3-mode system so that medium more closely resembles the EPS on the Grizzly, which I find to be just about right. You can also choose between work, standard, and performance modes through the 7S display. Although we didn't do much work during our testing, we did quite a bit of riding in standard and performance. For my type of riding, the higher shift points in performance mode made for a more responsive throttle and a more invigorating ride. Low-end power from the 44 horsepower single won't shorten your sleeves at each squeeze of the throttle, but as it builds to mid-range, power delivery is smooth and manageable for all-day riding. And clutching from the CVT is smooth and linear. There's also loads of storage under the front racks, and the rear trunk compartment is so cavernous I half expected to find a team of lost hikers in there. Hello! Hello! 2025 Polaris Sportsman 570 Touring EPS Ultimate Edition strikes a near perfect balance between performance, handling, and comfort features for both rider and passenger. Its feature-packed 7S display with ride command and comfortable seating for 2 enhances the overall experience, making long-distance rides more enjoyable and less exhausting. And whether for work or play, the Sportsman 570 Touring Ultimate beautifully illustrates Polaris's commitment to off-road adventure.
Trail Tech is sponsored by Princess Auto. Make it work.
You know, I'm really excited to be back in the shop shooting with the new Grizzly build. I've been wanting to get back in here and do this, and I keep on wanting to call it the WR700, but that's something for another day. I have a whole lot of parts to get on, so without further ado, let's just jump right back into it. And first up, let's change the look of this rig dramatically. The wheels and tire stock look good, but we want ultimate performance. On the tire side, we opted for the ITP Terracross RT. ITP says it has extreme duty construction, but what I take from it is that the extra sidewall ply and increased rubber thickness means that these will stand up to more abuse on the track or trail, and the wraparound shoulder lugs give excellent side grip in rutted out situations. The American-made design gives me confidence it's built right, and the wide variety of ATV application sizes means I was able to pick the exact size that I needed, which was 26 by 9 on a 14-inch rim. I also opted to go with a square setup for the ease of carrying a spare at races, and truthfully, I just like square setups. Now on the inside of our aggressive 26-inch ITP tires sits the other piece of kit that's really nice, which is the Raceline Podium 14-inch aluminum beadlock rims. And they're not just great looking, they're built for abuse because this is a true beadlock, nothing fake here. Built out of A356 aluminum and featuring a forged 6061 beadlock ring and grade 8 bolts, this rim is ready for anything. It comes in 14 and 15-inch sizes in satin black or something called stealth gray with various bolt patterns available, but all have the snap-in Raceline center cap and chrome logo. This rim was built for UTV spec strength, so I know that it's going to be strong enough to take our Grizz through anything that we throw at it. And it doesn't hurt that they look so dang good too. So the wheels and tires are beefed up now and they look pretty awesome if I do say so myself, but when it comes to underbody protection, this thing is not very well protected, so I'm gonna have to take some time and look into this. Skid plates generally come in two different varieties, UHMW, which is like a super strength plastic in various thicknesses, or aluminum. Both have their benefits, both have their drawbacks. I like aluminum for this build, and Yamaha offers a line of GYTR skids that are pristinely welded and truly add a level of protection that's hard to find elsewhere. Plus, you know these skid plates are gonna fit because they're genuine Yamaha accessories right from the factory. You can ask for these from your local Yamaha dealer and they'll hook you up. I went for the front and rear A-arm guards for the obvious protection of the tube arms, but I also opted for the center body skid plate that gives me the ultimate protection down the center of the Grizzly, protecting all the important stuff, including the frame that can take a pretty good beating. Install does take a little time due to all the fasteners, but the finished product looks incredible and most importantly is fully protected. And when linked with our D3 footwells is the ultimate in protection of this Grizzly. So I know in the last install I told you that I was gonna do suspension this week, but I'm gonna pump the brakes on that just a little wee bit until the next segment, because we're gonna take suspension to a bit of a different level. But for the rest of this week, I still got tons of great parts to install, so let's keep going. And out back, I've got a really important differential brace from HGT Machining. If you push these Grizzlies, there's a well-known issue with the rear differentials twisting out of the minimal differential mount holes. Actually, when you see how it's mounted, you realize that any performance upgrades, even just bigger tires and more aggressive riding, this brace is a must. It mounts to the differential with a significantly beefy aluminum L bracket, then features a frame cross brace stiffener that the diff brace also mounts to. Everything is 6061 aluminum and the hardware is grade 10.9, so you know that your diff isn't going anywhere. The brace was designed to allow for access for fluid changes, and it goes on really easily. While we haven't had any issues with this brand new machine, I've seen what can happen, and this brace means I won't have broken axles, stretched out diff mount holes, or broken diff cases. So we've covered off all the strength areas really well up to this point, but I want to make sure that we get the interactive stuff too, the controls, and ROX Speed Effects has hooked us up real good. ROX offers a whole bunch of great accessories for all different makes and models. For today, they sent me the current model Grizzly combo kit that includes the ROX Brutal X32 fat bars with a really nice taper and rise, the 5-inch pivoting aluminum riser, as well as the dash panel and fairing brace. They also hooked me up with some perfectly fit ODI lock-on ATV grips, as well as their Gen 3 FlexTex Mountain Light handguards and aluminum mounts. So not only will I have a perfectly fit sit or stand riding position of the bars, but I'll also have the added protection of the handguards. Add to this the relocated gauge that's now perfectly placed, and the driving experience is going to be next level. This is such a massive difference in how the ATV now feels. If you own a Grizzly or any other ATV, check out ROX's kits. They completely change the feel of your ride. Now to finish up, I've got a couple more items, but I'm not going to be installing all of them just yet. That kind of sounds confusing. You know what? Let me just show you what I mean. ROX sent me a few more parts. They're universal foot pegs, which are massive. I mean, these things are crazy big and really aggressive. However, our D3 footwells have built-in pegs, so I'm not going to install these just yet. If I do feel that I need more grip, I've got these and I can add them later. Secondly, ROX sent me their 2016 and up Grizzly seat cover, and this one is a nice cover. It's not hard to install either. The fabric used on the cover is far more durable than the factory seat stuff manufacturers use, and the stitching is reinforced everywhere, so no matter how hard I hang off the Grizz in a corner, it's not going to tear. The rubberized material that they use on the sides of the seats won't crack or fade either, which is nice, but extra benefit is it holds you on the seat in the off-camber situations, and that can be really beneficial. Final benefit, it looks way better than stock and adds another level of style that we all know is important as well. So that's it for this portion of the build, but make sure you stay tuned because in the next segment, we're gonna go through all new suspension as well as performance mods, and then we're gonna take this thing to a suspension tuning shop to have it custom tuned for my riding weight and style. Oh yeah, this is getting real now.
DIRT TRAX has been sponsored by Kawasaki. Let the good times roll. MBRP Performance Exhaust, built for the victory lap. And by Hercules Tire, ride on our strength.
Kawasaki's Ridge is big news this season. It's the first completely new model from them in quite some time, and it's got specs to rival any of its competition. But before I go into the specs or any ride impressions, I want to first do my best to position the Ridge among its closest competition. Polaris's Ranger and Can-Am's Defender are obviously utility side-by-sides that have adequate specs to be surprisingly good on the trail. Then there's the General and Commander that are trail-oriented side-by-sides that have some utility capabilities built in. I think the Ridge, or more specifically the Ridge XR like we have here, fits right in between these two categories. It's got sporty looks, impressive horsepower, great suspension, and other trail-focused features, yet has a full cab with HVAC, a large dumping cargo bed, more upright seating, and big towing capacity. It's more utility-focused than a General, but more trail-focused than a Ranger. I think the Ridge XR fits into a currently open space in the marketplace where there is a legitimate need. And I know for certain there are people looking for a side-by-side just like this one. The Ridge XR is currently available in just one trim, which is the HVAC model we have here. Later, it will be available in an open cab model and an open cab deluxe model. The HVAC version is the top of the line and obviously includes a fully sealed cab with front and rear glass screens, power windows, bucket seats, and, as the name suggests, a full HVAC system with both heat and AC. It really is the cab and the HVAC system that sets the Ridge apart from any of its perceived competition. There are no other side-by-sides in the industry right now that are the same size, with the same horsepower, travel, towing, and hauling specs that come with a full cab and HVAC. In this way, the Ridge XR is unique. And I do have to say, this is a very nicely built side-by-side. Fit and finish is excellent. The interior is nicely appointed and very comfortable. All the features work exactly as they should. The 3 drive modes, work, normal, and sport, are highly useful and have distinct characteristics. The gauge is big and easy to read. 4x4 system is easy to understand and use. There's lots of interior storage, including under the very comfortable center armrest, and even the massive parking brake in the middle of the dash works really well. In terms of comfort, the Ridge really does have it all. But if there's one thing about the Ridge I just can't figure out, it's the engine. Out back, you'll find a 1000cc 4-cylinder mill that makes 116 horsepower. And while I love the orientation of the engine with the intake in the front and the exhaust exiting straight out the back that helps mitigate in-cab heat, the question I have is, why use a 4-cylinder when the KRX has a perfectly good twin that makes almost the same horsepower but in a smaller package? I'm not saying the 4-cylinder doesn't work well. It does, but I just don't see the benefit of it. A few things I've noticed about this engine are that it seems to rev really high all the time, and that actually makes sense because lower displacement 4-cylinder engines like this one tend to make their horsepower and torque at higher RPM. But this means it just doesn't have that low-end grunt of a twin that I think would be better suited to a vehicle with a fairly heavy utility bias. Because it revs so high all the time, it also generates a lot more noise at a much higher pitch than a twin would, which makes sound inside the cab quite loud. Again, I'm not saying that this is a bad engine by any stretch of the imagination, because it's not. I'm just not sure it was the best choice for this application, especially when there were many other engines to choose from. My only other real gripe about the Ridge XR relates to cab stiffness. On bumpy trails, the cab exhibits a higher than acceptable amount of rattle. I think the reason this stands out is because Kawasaki has such a strong reputation for build quality and durability, so it just seems very out of place. But I do think this is one that would be easy for Kawasaki to fix in the future. I know there will be some who will complain about excessive body roll due to the lack of sway bars front or rear. And while this is a valid concern for people who want to trail ride the Ridge at higher speeds, I think when the Ridge is used as intended, as a sport utility side-by-side with a heavy bias to utility, the lack of sway bars becomes somewhat of a benefit as it allows for greater suspension articulation. But that really is up to each individual buyer to decide. When it comes to suspension, the Ridge XR actually has some pretty impressive specs. It's got 12.7 inches of travel front and rear and 13.8 inches of ground clearance. Now that keeps you rolling smooth down the trail and keeps you rolling over top of the obstacles. But while I'm down here, I also want to point out these metal inner fenders. I think this is a great idea and it gives me a way higher sense of safety and security when I'm inside the cab. When it's time to get the job done, an industry standard 1,000-pound bed capacity and an excellent 2,500-pound towing capacity mean there's almost nothing you can't do. So here are my final thoughts on Kawasaki's 2024 Ridge XR HVAC model. First, it looks tough. And you know what? Looks are important. But second, anyone who looks it over closely comes away with a sense that it's been built really well and that it's been built really tough, like it'll take anything you can throw at it. Noise inside the cab is on the high side, as is cab rattle, which are things that won't be an issue with the open air versions. But the interior features, especially the HVAC system, make riding in any condition pleasant and comfortable, so it's really up to you to decide. If you want a more utility-biased, full cab, HVAC-equipped, longer travel, highly capable sport utility side-by-side that's built tough, looks great, and bridges the gap between utility and recreation, you really only have one choice. Luckily, the Ridge XR HVAC is a great choice.